Welcome back, you whiskey-loving legends, for another episode of Was It Worth Whiskey. And today we have the Bruichladdich Port Charlotte 10-year-old. It's heavily peated. It's 50 ABV. It's from made in Islay. I think it's the second smallest distillery in Islay, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong. Comes in a lovely little tin like this one. Got a bit of writing on here, which I might share. We believe an Islay whiskey should live and breathe the fresh salt tang of Islay air. All its life, this is not a spirit distilled on the island and immediately shipped off to the mainland and matured in some undisclosed warehouse. There's a few puns there. This 10-year-old Port Charlotte has been conceived, distilled, matured and bottled in Islay alone. We're a young team with deep-rooted values and an ambition to make the ultimate Islay whiskey. There you go. Bottle's very nice too. It's got some nice raised writing here. Different to all the other bottles, as you can see. So when they were actually talking about, the whiskey being distilled and then shipped off to Islay. So they've made a commitment. They actually do warehouse it for its entire life on Islay. They bottle it on Islay. They use Islay water. I think they use a proportion of Islay barley, but not all of it. The only thing I don't think that they use as Islay is the peat. I think they import the peat. Let me know if you know where it's from. I've heard a few, but I haven't confirmed where it's from, so I can't say. Anyway, so this whiskey, it's been matured in 65% of it's been matured in first fill American bourbon barrels, 10% second fill American bourbon barrels, and 25% it's second fill French wine barrels. So it's got a bit of a complexity, or should have a bit of complexity about it. One thing I'd like to mention about this one, because it puts a lot of people off, I think, is the comment about the heavily peated. Now, when we think about heavily peated, and back in 2 years ago when I heard this was heavily peated, it first came out, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, I can't remember exactly. It took me a long time to try it because it was heavily peated. And I immediately thought of those ashtray tasting, like a whiskey like you're licking the ashtray of a public toilet. You know the ones, those cheaper ones. I'm going to put out there like the Talisker 10 or something like that. Don't get at me if you like that one, but it's just what I think. Anyway, on that, write down in the comments below what whiskey you think is just overly peated and just not a nice peat. Anyway, going back to the story, was that this particular one, it said heavily peated. It's a 40 ppm. But it did put me off for a long time until I tried it. And it's definitely, and we'll go through it in a minute, it's definitely not one of those horrible peats that I find anyway. So on that, let's give it a crack-a-lack. So on the nose straight away, it's a sweet smoke, sweet flowing in, or it's a sweet smoke. I get a salty brine, caramel, and then I get a little bit of that meatiness, that meaty, briny saltiness. If you look deep, you get some other notes. You get some amazing little notes of so maybe some cotton candy. And as well as those light phenolic notes going on as well. It really is a very, you can get a lot out of the nose. Once again, with a lot of other heavily peated whiskies, you don't get a whole lot of the nose because it's just overwhelmed with smokiness. bags of flavour in the mouth. Really nice mouth coating. I get a sweet smoke and then following into this dry, beautiful, yummy barbecue smoke, like barbecued meat smoke. You taste that salt air of the Islay. It's beautiful. I get nuts, like roasted nuts, like, you know, slightly overcooked, burnt, roasted nuts. Really, really nice. And that caramel just knocks it over again. Really interesting. For 50 ABV, it's really nice to drink straight up. However, out of the interest of science, I'm going to whack some water in it, just to see how we go. If you see here, I'm using this fancy little water dropper that I got. Here's a bit of free advertising for them. I got from Spritfilled. If you're ever interested in buying some casks of whiskey, they've certainly helped me out in the time. They haven't paid for this advert, that's just because I like using their little water dropper here. Anyway, let's see if that opens it up at all. Funny on the water side, I don't really usually put much water in whiskies. I don't like doing it. I think I've made that clear. But it does remind me of a joke. So this old lady, it was her 80th birthday, and so she decided to book a luxury cruise. She booked a cruise for her 80th birthday. She walked up to the bar. She said, "Bartender," she said, "Sonny, give me a Scotch with 2 drops of water." Bartender says, "Okay, here you go, ma'am. Is there any special occasion?" She said, "Yes, it's my 80th birthday." He said, "Don't worry, this one's on me," he said. She said, "Excellent, thank you." Anyway, she's sitting there, she's drinking a whiskey. And anyway, the lady next to her, she goes, "You know, I'd like to buy you a whiskey too." She goes, "Excellent. Bartender, another Scotch with 2 drops of water." Says, "No worries." Comes up, gives it to her. She sits there drinking. After a little while, she's just about finished, and the guy to the other side of her, he goes, "You know, since your birthday, go on, have another one on me," he said. She said, "Excellent." She said, "Sonny, bartender, you know what it is?" He said, "Yes, ma'am, yes, ma'am. 1 Scotch, 2 drops of water." She said, "Excellent, thank you." Anyway, so he pours the Scotch and puts it down, and he goes, "Just out of interest, what's with the Scotch and the 2 drops of water?" And she says, "Well, Sonny, when you get to my age, you've learned how to hold your liquor. But holding your water, however, is a whole nother issue." Anyway, there you go. So that's why we put water in whiskey. Maybe not, but it works for me. Let's see if it's opened it up at all. I get less. Still get the meatiest, a little bit less smoke. Actually, I think I prefer the nose without water in it. Maybe it's opened up a bit more of a phenolic taste, nose to it. The palate's different. The palate, I get a more of a citrus, a little bit of mint. But still, I think I prefer it without the water. Yep. And the finish. So on the finish, we get a delicate smoke coating with this lovely bitterness that just lingers. I get a little bit of green apples on the end as well. Maybe a little bit of lemon. Anyway, let's give this little whiskey a score. I'm going to give it a, for the nose, I'm going to give it an 89. I thought it was a great nose. Really complex without the water at 50 ABV. The palate, I'm going to give it an 88. And the finish, I'm going to give it an 87 points. Giving a grand total of 88 points. So more importantly than that is the was it worth it score. So this bottle of whiskey we can get for 45 quid, 70 USD, 100 AUD. So it's a relatively available and affordable whiskey. And so on that price, with a score of 88 points, I'm going to give it a thumbs up, 8 out of 10. And I reckon a few people have said, you know, it's not a beginner's whiskey. For a beginner's whiskey, if you're looking to go into peated whiskies. But I kind of disagree, because I think, yes, might not be a beginner's whiskey, but if you're a whiskey and you've been drinking whiskey for a while, and maybe you've had some of those ashtray licking whiskies that we're all writing about in the comments below, and you're put off by it, I think if you had a crack at this, maybe you might like it. It's definitely different. It's much more complex than just a smoke bomb in your face. The smoke actually adds flavour and adds taste and develops the whole whiskey itself. So I really enjoy it. I recommend it to people to try. And at the end of the day, 45 quid, 70 USD, 100 AUD. If you're into whiskey, why not give it a go? Anyway, till next time, keep it smoking and cheers.